A funeral was held, a death certificate was signed. However, a few days later, the little girl opened her eyes, and from that moment on, a war broke out, not only in the hospital, but also in the media and under the law. 3 days after being admitted to the intensive care unit, Sophie Taylor, the little girl who had been declared dead, opened her eyes, without a sound. In the blink of an eye, the world around her changed. Dr. Singh paused as he checked the numbers. On the screen was a clear vital sign. For the first time in 72 hours, Sophie responded. Robert pushed open the door to the hospital room. He knelt down beside his daughter. Sophie turned her head very slowly and whispered, Fa, da, ka, ta. No one in the room will ever forget that moment. A child who had been declared dead called out the name of the dog that saved his life. But if awakening is a miracle, then the consequences of misdiagnosis are a bomb about to explode. Less than 24 hours after Sophie woke up, Riverist General Hospital was in chaos. Dr. Singh sent a report to the state medical board. The news began to spread. A child was declared dead, had a death certificate, had a funeral, and then woke up. That is no longer negligence. It is a medical ethics disaster. Major newspapers began calling. Headlines appeared, Girl comes back to life after funeral, and serious medical error at Riverist General. Dr. Peterson, the man who signed the death certificate, was silent. He didn't talk to the press, nor did he talk to the nurses. But in his office, he was panicking. Riverside Hospital is no longer a place of treatment, but a battlefield. A life has just returned, but a series of truths are being exposed. A death certificate is the final document that confirms a person has left this life. For Sophie Taylor, doctor, Peterson signed it 2 hours after she fell into a cataleptic state. No additional neurological testing, no consultation, one signature for all. Now that signature is the biggest piece of evidence in any lawsuit. Under state law, misdiagnosis and signing a death certificate without a scientific basis can be criminally prosecuted, and this is not Peterson's first mistake. Some medical staff began speaking out. They remembered cases where Peterson had declared deaths a little hasty. Then, old records were dug up. A signature that seemed like a formality now becomes the spark that ignites the entire medical and legal system. And Sophie herself, the little girl who survived the funeral, is a living witness to the unimaginable. It started as whispers among nurses on duty. A little girl came back to life after a funeral. Did a doctor sign a wrong death certificate? But then, those whispers left the hospital hallways and became headlines. The first article appeared on a medical blog. 4 hours later, the front page of the Herald read, Girl revives after her own funeral. Then, everything exploded. The hospital gates were swarming with press. Cameras, flashbulbs, and microphones shot up from every direction. Everyone wanted to know, what really happened to Sophie Taylor? It is not just the story of one little girl. It is the big question. If a health system can make such a misdiagnosis, how many people have been declared dead when they are really still alive? The story spread nationwide from a small town. Then, seemingly unrelated people began to stand up, because Sophie not only survived, but made an entire system answer. Less than 48 hours after Sophie woke up, Riverist General Hospital was on alert, not because of the patient's condition, but because public opinion and the law were weighing down the walls. The hospital was divided. Some doctors called for an independent investigation. Others feared damage to their reputations. The board held a closed-door meeting, and Dr. Peterson's name was a major topic. Lawyers began to get involved. One group represented the Taylor family. Another was hired by the hospital to protect its image. But every attempt at a cover-up only made the story spread further. If a hospital can falsely declare a child dead, what else is being covered up? It is no longer an individual failure. It is a sign of a system that is failing. Riverist General is not just facing a lawsuit, it's facing a crisis of trust. And sometimes, loss of trust is more dangerous than any medical error. As public pressure pushes the hospital to the brink of crisis, a voice from the past returns, one Peterson once silenced. Her name is Caroline Mills, former head nurse in pediatrics. She raised the alarm about unnatural deaths under Dr. Peterson, but no one listened until now. She provided more than 40 pages of internal documents, ignored emails, rejected testing recommendations, incomplete removal of ventilator records. A system is being exposed. This time, Caroline's voice was not ignored. This time, thousands heard it. A man who was once silenced is now the most important witness in the case. And that is something Peterson cannot stop. As the nation watches Sophie Taylor's miraculous journey, the man who helped discover she was alive faces an old problem. Jake Morgan, a former Special Forces soldier, was released from a 6-year sentence for assault during a fight. His parole order stipulated no participation in civil investigations, no interference with public affairs. Jake broke the law, but he saved a life. The whole town knows it, and now they won't let him get caught. The people of Riverest organized a petition requesting a stay of Jake's arrest because his actions were in the public interest. And something strange happened. The court ruled, stay of detention pending review. Jake Morgan was not brought to trial. He became a free man, and a symbol of courage, even at a cost. As the truth about Sophie spread, the public began to ask, what led to such a terrible medical error? Was it professional negligence, or was it ego that clouded her morals? Within the hospital, a split began. One faction sided with Dr. Peterson, who had more than 20 years of experience. The other believed that he had acted arrogantly, ignoring ethical principles. Sometimes the fault lies not in the equipment or in the knowledge. It lies in the lack of humility to listen. Sophie doesn't get a second chance if a dog doesn't respond. If a doctor doesn't have the courage to question standard procedure. The question becomes clearer than ever. Should we trust experience or trust kindness? Should we trust reputation or dare to listen to the unusual? And does the current health system still have room for timely skepticism? This is not just a little girl's battle. It is a confrontation between two values, reputation and conscience. Before the medical ethics debate could die down, the national media hit with the force of a tsunami. Sophie Taylor, once an unknown patient, became a name the whole country could not ignore. The hashtag #sign Sophie Lives appeared on social media. In just 12 hours, it was shared more than 8 million times. The story spread to France, Japan, and Brazil, a global explosion of conscience and justice. But it is not just anger. Sophie's story is emblematic. This is for those who have lost loved ones in silence. This is for victims who have never had a voice. And this is for those who have been abandoned by the system. Politicians began speaking out. Health organizations began investigating. Amid the media spotlight, Riverest General Hospital became the most talked about name across America. This is no longer an incident. This is a wave. The question is no longer, is Sophie really coming back? But who will be next if the system stays the same? Amid a media storm and hundreds of debates, inside a silent white room, Sophie Taylor lay there. Peaceful, fragile, and suddenly life whispered. The girl still didn't speak and didn't open her eyes again. But then, her right index finger moved slightly. It was a movement so small that no one was sure it was real. Dr. Singh saw it. It was not a mechanical reflex. It was the first sign of consciousness, and the best hope since Sophie first woke up. A tiny finger shook a seemingly indifferent system. From that moment, Sophie was not just a victim. She was a living symbol. Sometimes, it doesn't take a voice, a step, or an affirmation. Just a finger is enough to let the world know, I'm still here. The day Sophie moved her finger was also the day Robert Taylor, a single father, made the biggest decision of his life, to personally sue Riverest General Hospital and Dr. Peterson. The lawsuit filed in state court alleges misdiagnosis resulting in serious physical injury, lasting psychological consequences, and unethical conduct by a professional. Robert is not suing for money. He is suing because his daughter deserves to live and to receive an apology. He does not want any other child to die because of a wrong signature. The lawsuit has been dubbed online as the first surviving funeral record in American history. Robert, a father who was once on the verge of giving up, has become a voice for families hurt by the system. The legal battle officially began. From that moment on, it was no longer the doctors, the hospitals, or the institutions that were under scrutiny. It was the entire system that had been trusted and was now forced to answer. On the third day of the trial, Dr. Peterson, the man who had declared Sophie Taylor dead, took the stand. The unexpected happened. From the very first questions, he seemed confused. When confronted with ignored records, unanswered emails, and flawed forensic procedures, he began to lose control. At first, there was silence, then there was justification, and finally, a long silence. Peterson hung his head, unable to answer another question. He didn't cry, but that silence spoke the loudest, of a doctor who had been too confident in his procedures and too careless with the lives of others. And now, he had to face the truth. Peterson was not handcuffed, but he had lost something he could never regain: trust. For the court and the Taylor family, that silent confession was enough. As Dr. Peterson bowed his head and left the witness stand, the town of Riverest, where it all began, was no longer the same. It was no longer a quiet town. This was an awakened community. From those who were once skeptical, they organized meetings, wrote letters to the governor, and demanded transparency from the medical board. But it wasn't just about action. One shop hung a picture of Sophie next to the words, "Because she lived, we must live right." They can't turn back time, but they can protect the future. This community is not on anyone's side. It's on the side of truth. A little girl came back to life after her own funeral. She breathed life into the hearts of a community that seemed dead because of broken faith. As the dust settled, as Sophie began to walk, as the community found its voice again, one man, Jake Morgan, stood silently behind. Once scarred by his past and at risk of returning to the penitentiary, Jake is now known by another name in the community: the Keeper of Life. Jake declined all the honors but agreed to one thing: offering free service dog training classes to hospitals and rehabilitation centers across the state. In just 3 months, more than 27 facilities signed up for Jake's program, and his training model was nominated for statewide public health program status. Jake didn't need forgiveness. He just needed a chance to make things right, and this time, he didn't miss it. The court ruled that Riverest General Hospital and Dr. Peterson must pay full compensation, but no one celebrated. Because in this story, there are no winners, only lessons written in blood and tears. Peterson was stripped of his medical license. Riverest General's operations were partially suspended. But what people are more concerned about is how to ensure that no one like Sophie has to be near death again. New laws were proposed. Every death had to be certified by at least 2 independent doctors. Medical ethics courses were made mandatory in medical schools, and Sophie's story became textbook material. Sophie still can't walk. She changed the system, and that, for her family, is a piece of justice. Justice has begun, but the battle for faith, awareness, and the lives of the vulnerable continues. And if a 6-year-old girl can change the system, then perhaps hope is never too late.